In general, there are two types of function. The first one is standard library function, and the second one is programmer-defined function or your own function. In this video, we're going to talk about the first one, which is standard library function. Standard library function is a function that you can use straight away. You don't need to define it. Remember the concept of a function? It has a definition and you need to call the function. So for standard library function, you don't have to code the definition. It already has a definition coded and kept in a file called header file. But to use a standard library function, you still need to call the function. Before you can use a function, you need to know what the function does. For example, function square root would calculate the square root of a number. You also need to know how to call the function. To do this, basically, you need the name of the function, and you also need to write the data that you want to pass to the function, and we call these arguments. So if I write square root 25, it means I give the data 25 to the function square root. 25 is the argument that I pass to the function square root. The last one, you need to know which header file to include in your program. Header file means what is the name of the library that has the definition of your function. You can imagine that to use a standard library function is like borrowing a book from a library. To borrow a book, you need to know which library that has the book. So to use a function, you need to know which library that has the definition of your function. So in order to use a standard library function in your program, there are two things that you need to write. The first one is you need to include the library, and then the second one is that you need to call the function. So let's say I want to calculate a number to the power of another number, and I want to use this function POW, P-O-W. So what I need to do, I need to include the library that has the definition of function POW. In this case, it's CMath, so I write #include CMath after I write my #include IOStream. And then when I want to do the calculation, I write the name of the function, which is POW, and I pass the data that it needs. So if I want to calculate 2 to the power of 3, I pass the argument 2 and argument 3 to the function. So there are a lot of predefined mathematical functions that are available in the CMath library. For example, power, square root, and so on. But you need to make sure that before you can use these functions, you need to do the #include CMath. And also you need to provide the function with valid arguments in order for the function to work. So a little bit about arguments. There are arguments that are data that are passed to your function. If you have multiple arguments, you have to separate it by comma. For example, function power, just now, you have 2 arguments, right? Given or passed to the function, so you separate the 2 arguments using a comma, and then you should take note the number of the arguments that you need to pass to the function and also the data type of the arguments. So if the function need an integer, you give it an integer number. If your function need a string, you give it a string. So these are among mathematical functions that are available in CMath library. So in order to use any of these functions, you need to know the name of the function, and you also need to know how many arguments does it need, and also take note the data type of the arguments. So this is an example of a complete program that uses standard library function. Can you tell me what is the library that we use, what is the name of the function, and also what is the argument that we pass to the function? By looking at the previous example, try to write your own program to solve this exercise. You're going to need to use 2 standard library functions, power and square root, in order to find the hypotenuse value. So give it a try. Thank you.